Hi guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, we're going to be learning a classical tune that I wrote. Now, this lesson is going to be the second in our songwriting series. If you missed the first, you can click this link. It came out last week, and it's a really cool blues tune. Now, this blues tune used a unique way to approach songwriting. And that approach was to take a melody from a song that you love and use that as your springboard to write around. Now, you can do that with any song. You can take a melody or a harmony or anything from a song that you love and use that as a starting point to write around. Now, this week's lesson is different because this week we're using a different concept to approach songwriting. And the concept is going to be this. It's to write a song in the style of. So this classical tune is actually based on a lesson that I put out a few weeks ago or a month or so ago, which was called Lagrima. So it's another classical tune, but if you listen to that tune, you'll hear a lot of similarity with this song. And the similarities are that it's got the same format. It's got an A melody and a B melody. It goes A, B, A. It also has one melody that's written in a minor key, the other one that's written in the parallel major key. And then you'll see a lot of the same movement, which is playing double stops, which means playing two notes at the same time, and then to play a pedal tone in between the chord changes. So if I play just the first part of this theme one, you hear that I'll play a chord and then the open E. That's my pedal tone to a different chord, the open E, different chord, open E. Right, so this Lagrima and this tune, it's not the first song to use that songwriting approach. A lot of songs come to mind. Blackbird is one that probably is one of the most famous modern tunes. But I think, if I remember right, Paul talked about trying to learn a Bach piece, and eventually he just gave up and then wrote Blackbird. So, these approaches for songwriting, they come from, so many songs. But anyways, the idea behind this lesson, just to put it in a nutshell again, is to write a song that's in the style of. So the whole idea behind this songwriting series is just to make it a little bit less scary when you start to write your own songs. Instead of starting from blank, you have two ideas now. You can do what the blues tune did, borrow a melody from a song you love, use that to write around, or you can write a song in the style of, which is what this tune does. Now, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this lesson. So in this lesson, we're going to be learning the entire piece. If you do want to get the tabs to print off and follow along with, it's going to be available as a PDF format at this link, or you can go to the site, rockclass101.com, do a search for the name of this classical piece, and also on that page, you'll be able to access the on-screen tab viewer. Now, this is a really cool feature where you can hit play, you can watch the tab scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. Just a really great asset for learning a tune like this that much easier. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into this. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is the right hand approach for picking. So most of this piece is actually going to work well with a 3-finger approach. That means that our thumb gets string 4 and string 3, index would get string 2, and then middle finger gets string 1. So you can jump between the 3-finger approach, or you could also use a 4-finger approach, which each finger gets its own string. Either one works, but for me, I tend to favor the 3-finger approach, that many. Okay, so let's go ahead and kick off. We're going to learn theme number 1. Each theme is 10 bars in length. So keep that in mind as we go through it, but there are a few bars that repeat, so it's not actually 10 bars we have to learn. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to play measure 1, and then we'll break it down and learn it. Okay, so the first thing that we hear is that we're playing out of 3. So we have 3 beats per measure, 1, 2, 3. And then the next measure, 1, 2, 3, next measure, so forth. The other thing we hear is that the rhythm, and I'll put the hits up there, very simple. It's all 1/8 notes. Now, this whole song is predominantly eighth notes with a couple quarter notes sprinkled in. So very simple from a rhythmic standpoint. The big thing with this tune, though, is how we're playing it. There's really two approaches that you can do. You can play this song like perfectly in time. Ba da 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 ba da ba da ba da ba da ba da ba da. You can play it like perfectly, to a click, perfect timing. But it sounds, to me, for this type of music, it almost sounds a little bit robotic if you do it like that. So once we finish learning this first part, we're going to talk about how you can use a little bit of rubato, which means that we don't have to strictly adhere to the tempo. We don't have to be perfectly locked in. So we're going to talk about that after we learn it. Okay, so let's learn our first few chords, and there's really two shapes that we're moving between. So first one, we're just going to start with an A minor. So make the stock A minor with the middle finger. The next one, we're going to be playing an E. Now this is going to be an E7 chord shape. So most of us know this chord shape. The only thing here is we don't even need the middle finger, so we can just lift it up. And I want to call this shape number 1. So first finger is the first fret of string 4. Ring finger is the second fret of string 1. Let's call this shape 1. You can see shape 1 is a half step apart. Now from here, we're just going to move up a half step. So you're literally just going to go to the second and the third fret. Okay, so backtrack, go to that A minor. I want you to pluck string 4 and string 1. So I'm going to use thumb and the ring finger, or you can use thumb and the middle. After that, you're going to play the pedal tone, which is the open E. Then go back to the first and the third for the E chord, and then hit the open E, and then move up a half step. Second and third takes us back to an A minor, and then hit the open E. So rhythmically, all eighths. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay? So keep in mind, this is shape number 1. It's a half step apart. Let's try bar number 1. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Nice. Now from here, going into bar 2 sounds like this. So we're hearing a walk down. So this is where we left off on 2 and 3. I want you to move the ring finger up to 7 and the index finger up to 5. Same 2 strings. So we have 5 on string 4, 7 on string 1. Now you can see that what happened is we have a fret in between. So we're a whole step apart, right? This is going to be shape 2. So you can see shape 1 was a half step apart. Shape 2 is a whole step apart. Now as I walk down in this measure, I'm going to pluck 4 and 1, then the open E. Then I'm going to go down to 4 and 5, which gives me shape 1. I'm going to pluck 4 and 1, and then hit the open E. And then I'm going back to that A minor, which was shape 1, which was 2 and 3, and hit the open E. So you can see we start with shape 2, 5, 7, open E, going down to 4, 5, shape 1, open E, and then back to A minor and the open E. So literally, as you walk through this first part, you're literally bouncing between 2 shapes. So we have shape 1, shape 1, shape 2, shape 1, shape 1. So it's just a little trick for making this a lot easier to play, just to memorize the shape movement. So again, let's try just the second measure, which goes C to E7 to A minor. So let's give that one a shot. All eighths, 2 and 3 and... Nice. And if we backtrack, let's try bar 1 into bar 2. 2 and 3 and... Awesome. From here, move down a half step. So we're going to be playing an E major 7. This one's probably going to be the hardest. But first off, we notice we're back to shape 1. Right? Or we're staying in shape 1, technically. Not back to. We're staying in shape 1. The thing that's hard about this is that we have to add our pinky finger. We're going to add it to the 3rd fret on string 3. And our pattern is going to be a little bit different because we're going to be plucking 4 and 1 together, and then playing the open E, and then playing string 3, and then the open E, then string 4, and open E. So calling out the plucks and the strings, we have pluck, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2. Okay, so memorize that pattern. Pluck, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2. Now, as I walk down to this E major 7, one thing that's going to make it easier to play, especially when you're playing at a faster tempo, watch that pinky. It goes onto the 3rd fret of the 3rd string on beat 2. So I don't have to magically grab this entire chord from the get-go, from beat 1. I add the pinky when the music calls for it, which is on beat 2. So as I walk down, see the pinky went down on beat 2. So that's going to make that transition and grabbing that chord much easier. Now, you can also use different fingers if you want. You could try 1, 2, and 3. But to me, I felt like the pinky finger was the easiest. But it's up to you. So experiment a little bit and pick the one that would be best for you. But let's do this. Let's see if we can try just measure 3 by itself. So here we go. 2 and 3 and. Okay, if we backtrack, let's try 1, 2, and 3. Here we go. 2 and 3 and. Nice. Now, we kept that rhythm and that timing and that tempo. We kept everything steady, right? So backtracking to what I said a little bit ago, if we want to put a little bit of rubato, which means we don't have to stay so steady, it's going to make this piece sound more emotional, more human put into it, more spirit put into it. And so I think the best way is to demonstrate what that means, what that sounds like, and then kind of just talk about it a little bit, explain it. So I'm going to play those same few bars, and I'm probably going to play it twice through because bars 1 through 3 actually repeats twice. So 1 through 3 becomes 4, 5, and 6 as well. So let me play through twice, and then we'll break down what this rubato stuff is. Okay, so we hear quite a few contrasting motions, right? We can hear that it starts out pretty slow, but speeds up, and then has a really drawn out retardando, right? So start slow, start to speed up, big retardando. Tardando means to gradually slow down. It's kind of like when the light turns yellow when you're driving. You start to gradually slow down to a stop on red. So same concept. So as you hear it played like that, it sounds a lot more emotional. It has a bigger impact than just going. Right? Now there's no right or wrong. If you prefer keeping it steady, you can do that. But experiment a little bit. Try to play a little bit slower and a little bit faster in some parts, maybe add a retardando, switch it up. And basically what I'm saying is take it and make it your own. Have a little fun with this. This isn't a song that needs to be perfectly in time unless you want it to be. So moving on, we now know that bars 1 through 3 repeats, so it's 1 through 6. So let's learn the next bar, which on the tab it's going to be bar 4, so we'll keep calling it bar 4, but in reality it's the 7th bar of this theme. So here is what the next one sounds like. Okay, I lied, I played all of the remaining bars, but let's break down just the first one. So it's actually going to start with this really cool diminished walk down, and that's just the first part of it. There's a couple more notes in that measure right here, this 4th measure. But let's start with just this. And the first thing that we want to do is look at the chord that we're playing out of, which is this B diminished chord. So I want you to take the middle finger, put it on 7 on string 4, ring finger is 7 on string 2, pinky is 8 on string 1. We're ignoring string 3. Now, the thing is that when we move up to this chord, that same concept of adding one finger at a time when the music calls for it is going to be applied to this, because it's really hard to go from the last section and then grab everything in time, right? So if I go from the last section, and you see I add one finger at a time, it makes that transition infinitely easier. Okay, so you're going to start with just the middle finger on the 7th fret of string 4, and then add the pinky for the 8th fret of string 1. So you have 7 on 4, 8 on 1, and then add the ring finger to 7 on string 2, lift the pinky up, and you're going to play the last note, which is 5 on string 1. So we have Sev, 8, Sev, lift the pinky up, 5. Keep in mind, 8th note rhythm, to end. Okay, now after that we have to add a couple more notes, and this is going to tag the end of this 4th measure into the 5th measure. And the end of this 4th measure into the 5th measure plays out of an A minor. So we're going to do the same approach with this B diminished. We're going to learn the chord shape first, and it's going to be very similar to what we've done with the B diminished, just a little bit more of a gap spacing. So basically what you need to do is take that middle, move it down to the 5th fret of string 4, take that ring finger, put it on 5 on string 2, so that remains the same as B diminished. The only difference here is that pinky needs to stretch to 7 on string 1. Again, ignoring string 3. So you may want to just practice this diminished to this A minor. Okay, so just take a second to get comfortable with that. This stretch, or this gap right here, really is a bit of a hard stretch, and it's going to maybe feel a little bit awkward if you're used to, or if you're new to doing stretch chords, stretch licks, stretch phrases, anything that involves a bigger reach between the 1st or the 3rd and the 4th finger. So if you're new to tackling those kind of chords or those kind of licks or phrases or anything, I'll put a link in the description box below to our lesson on increasing left hand reach. It's got 3 exercises that help to increase the reach of your left hand and make these things feel a lot more comfortable to play. Okay, so going back to this, same concept applies, guys. We don't have to make the full chord shape from the get-go. We add one finger at the time the music calls for it. So tagging the end of bar 4, beat 3 is going to be 5 on string 4, 7 on string 1. So you're going to add middle and then pinky. Going into the next measure, you're going to be adding the ring finger and then the 1st finger onto the 3rd fret of string 1. So you have 5, Sev, 5 on string 2, 3 on string 1. So what you may want to practice is bar 4 into the first half of bar 5. So you literally have this. Okay, so that's a good phrase to practice. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and. It's really, really interesting because that phrase lingers into the next bar, right? So it doesn't sound like a start of a new phrase, it just continues. So take a moment just to practice that. Hit pause. We'll try it together here. 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and. Now to finish up this fifth measure on the tablature, we're going to be playing again out of a B diminished 7, this time B diminished 7, before we resolve to the A minor. So let's take a look at what's happening. The first thing that we want to do again is to look at the chord that we're forming. So for this B diminished 7, we're going to be using the middle finger on 4 on string 4, pinky on 5 string 1, and our ring finger on 4 string 2. Okay? So another thing you may want to practice is the same shape for the B diminished, sev, sev, 8. Then we went to A minor, 5, 5, sev, and then to this B diminished down here, 4, 4, 5. So same shape for the diminished, just a step and a half apart, just like every other diminished chord. So with this though, same thing applies. We don't have to have all these fingers down at the get-go. Instead, what we need to do is to have second and pinky down at the get-go. So from here, I want you to pluck 4 and 1, add the index finger to 2 on string 1, and do a pull off with the pinky. After that, you're going to add the ring to 4 on string 2. So play that note. And then we're going to go down to second and the first fret. So second on string 3, first fret, string 2. That's going to finish that bar up. So that last half of this measure sounds like this. Okay, so remember, start 4 and 5, pluck, pull off to 2, 4 on string 2, then 2 and 1. All right, so let's just try that only. So we start on beat 2. 3 and 1 and. So very important, don't rush that pull off. Right, keep that one steady. So let's do this. Let's backtrack. Let's try that fourth and the fifth measure together. Here we go. 2 and 3 and. Okay. Now the next thing that we're going to be doing is basically moving up and down to resolve it. So that's going to sound like this. So if you think where we left off on 2 and 1. Lift the index finger up, move the middle up a whole step to 4. So we're going to play the 4th fret of string 3 and the open E. So we're basically doubling an E note. Here comes that stretch chord stuff again. Take the pinky, put it on 7 on string 1. So we have a big gap right there. So if you need help on these chords, check out the 3 exercises for increasing left hand reach I linked a little bit ago. Okay, so you've got 4 on string 3 plus the open E, pluck that, then pluck 7 on string 1. And then you're going to go up and you're going to do, oh, actually, sorry, I'm jumping to the end of this song. We're going to go back down for this part, for theme 1. We're going to go back down and we're going to play just the stock A minor. So we have pluck, sev, back to A minor. These are all quarter notes. So you have 1, 2, 3. Now this third is going to last into the next measure. And so basically you want to approach it like this. You want to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it's up to you too. If you want to hold it for longer, you can add a fermata too. So if you want to just play it in kind of free time like we talked about the rubato, you can hold that and let it sustain for as long as you wish. But that's basically theme 1 in a nutshell. So let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can try the last half of it. So we're going to start from the B diminished walk down. So here we go. Keeping it steady. 2 and 3 and. Nice. Now going back through everything, so let's try from the beginning. Don't forget the first 3 bars repeat 2 times through. So here we go from the beginning. 1, 2, 3. All right, so let's move on to theme number 2. Now, theme 1 was a very sad sounding melody, right? It was written in the key of A minor. The thing about theme 2 is that it becomes happy. It's written in the key of A major. So it's the parallel major. So kind of a cool change in sound. We go from one theme sounding very somber and sad to the other theme sounding happy and uplifting. So it makes for a beautiful sounding contrast. So let me play the first part of this theme 2 and we'll break it down. You're going to notice not only the change in the sound of the music, but you're going to hear a lot of similarities in terms of rhythm because it pretty much stays predominantly with eighth notes. Okay, so there's into the first few measures of this theme number 2. So let's go ahead and start with the first one. Let's break it down. It's very, very easy. Make the standard A major chord. So we're literally just going to pluck out of this chord. We're going to go string 4 and string 1, and then we're going to play string 3, string 2, string 1, string 2, string 3. So we have the double pluck, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's give it a shot. 2 and 3 and... Okay, very, very simple, right? Going into the next one, it's going to be a little bit challenging because we have kind of an interesting chord change. Here's what it sounds like. Okay, so it's really cool. So, starts out simple. Pluck out of the A, both strings, string 3, string 2. Starts the same. So we have pluck, 3, 2. At this point, you're going to have to flip-flop these 2 fingers. So first and second are going to invert. So first goes on to first fret of string 4, second goes on to second fret of string 3, and here's the kicker. The pinky goes onto the 4th fret of string 1. So you're going to pluck those 2 strings together, and then after that you're going to play the 3rd string, which is the 2nd fret, and then lift the pinky up and add the ring finger to the 2nd fret of string 2, thus creating the basic E7, right? But this first one that we're going to is an E13. So you probably want to just get used to that. You want to practice 2 things. You want to practice that little flip-flop, right? And then we can apply the same concept. We add the middle finger at the time the music calls for it. So it doesn't have to go down right away. Doesn't have to go down right there, it goes down on the next beat. Okay? And then make it the basic E7. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and... So all eighths. Okay? So hit pause, that one's probably one of the trickier ones in this tune, but hit pause, practice that, and let's try it together. 2 and 3 and... Okay, and let's backtrack. Let's try for theme 2, the first into the second measure of theme 2. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Nice. Now, if we go into the next part, it's basically going to take us back to playing out of the A chord for the first half. So we're seeing a lot of similarity. So the first half is going to be, Okay, so plucking 4 and 1, string 3, string 2. But then we're going to do a big move up. And that's going to start our walk down for the next phrase. So here's what this entire measure sounds like. All right, so let's break that one down. So we already know, start out with A, pluck together, string 3, then string 2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the index finger up, I'm going to slide the middle finger up to 7 on string 4, and then add the pinky to 9 on string 1. So this takes us back to what we talked in theme 1, shape 1 and shape 2. So we can see that we're in shape 2, but I think it's easier to use second and pinky for the fingering for this, because it's literally just a slide up and then add the pinky finger. So we have 2 and 4, 7, 9. So pluck those two, and then we're back to that pedal tone of the open E. So we have together, 3, 2, lift the index, slide the middle up to 7, add the pinky to 9, pluck both, and then open E. And we're going to add one last note to finish up this measure. So lift the pinky finger up, take the ring, put it down on 7 on string 1. Okay, so together you have okay, if I count it, 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, so all eighths, keeping it steady. Okay, so let's try that one together. We'll go slow. 2 and 3 and. Now the other tip too is anytime you have big jumps, so this is a big jump up the neck, use the dots to help guide you. The first dot on a lot of ukes is either going to be the 3rd or the 5th fret. So just take a look at what you have. Unfortunately, they're not all uniform. But for mine, it's going to be the 3rd. The next dot is the 5th. Next dot is 7. Next is 10. And the double dot is always the 12th fret. So if I am looking at this part right here, I know that I'm starting on the 2nd fret, and I've got to go to 7. That means that I have to go to my 1st, 2nd, 3rd dot. So my eye is going to be locked onto that 3rd dot, which is the 7th fret. So I'm not going to watch my finger slide up. Instead, I'm going to keep my eye on the target, which is the 7th fret, and I'm going to move my left hand until it meets the target, which is that 3rd dot. So that's kind of the trick for navigating and doing giant jumps up the fretboard. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. So again, we're doing a walk down for this section. All right, so that's what it sounds like put together. But here's the next measure. It sounds like this. Okay, so we have to think of where we left off. We left off on double 7. So we're going to be leading with the middle finger. I want you to go down to the 4th fret of string 4 and then add the pinky down onto the 5th fret of string 1. So pluck both of those. We've done this shape before. We're going to pluck both and then do the open E. After that, use the ring finger to play the 4th fret on string 1. Okay, so let's just try that. 3 and 1 and 2. Nice. From here, lift the middle finger up. Move the ring down a whole step to the 2nd fret of string 1. You're going to pluck the open E along with that 2nd fret of string 1. Add the middle finger to the 2nd fret of string 3. And then add the pinky to 4 on string 1. Okay, so a bit of a finger frenzy right here because everything we've done so far has been 4 and 1 plucking together, right? So we're pretty used to playing on 4 and 1, but here we're going to be playing on 3 and 1. So again, we're going to start on 4 and 5, pluck those together, open E, then add the ring to the 4th fret of string 1, lift the middle, move the ring down to the 2nd fret, pluck that with the open E. Here's the change, 2nd fret string 3, and then pinky on 4, string 1. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and. So a bit of a finger frenzy without counting. You can hear nice transitions. So let's see if we can try that one together. You may need to hit pause and practice because it is a little bit tricky. But let's see if we can go slow. 2 and 3 and... Awesome. Now that's going to wrap up into the next measure, resolving on A. So when we go into the next measure, we're going to go with one difference at the end of it. So I want you to pluck 4 and 1, string 3, string 2, string 1, and then string 2 twice. We'll talk about why we're doing that twice in a second. Okay, let's try that. 2, 3. All right, now let's do this. Let's backtrack. Let's try the walk down those last 2 bars together. So we're going to start on the E7, resolving to A. So let's try those, and we'll go about this speed. Da, 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 ba, do, do, da, do, do, da. Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, if we backtrack, let's try everything up to that point. So together we have okay, let's give it a shot. Really slow though. So we'll go 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, now at this point, we're going to be doing a giant walk up. So using those guiding fret markers is going to be extremely valuable for this part. Let me play a little bit of this walk. I should play the whole little walk up, and that'll give you a context of what we're jumping into. So here's what this next measure sounds like. Okay, so a lot of movement, right? But here's the thing. Look at the shapes. Shape 1 to shape 2. So the first 2 chords, shape 1, next 2 chords, shape 2. So a little way to cheat and help memorize it easier. So we're going to start on 4-5. Again, I'm going to use second and pinky because when we get up to the giant walk down, it's a lot easier to form a lot of these chords using second and pinky. So I'm just going to start my way walking up with those fingerings because it makes the walking down easier. So again, start on 4-5. So we have this little E7 chord right here. We're going to pluck those, then the open E, then go up a whole step, keep the same shape. So you pluck 6-7. So we have pluck, open E, 6-7, pluck. Then we're going to switch into shape 2. So go up a half step with the middle and a whole step with the pinky. So you're on 7-9 and then the open E. So key thing to note as well, we have together, open E, together, together. No open E in between those 2. So you can hear ba da da da. Okay, now you're going to have the open E, and then we're going to go up a whole step, keep shape 2, so that gives us the 9th and the 11th fret. So we have 4-5, open E, 6-7, both shape 1, then shape 2, 7-9, then open E, and then up a whole step, 9 and 11. So 4-5, open E, 6-7, 7-9, open E, 9 and 11. Okay, so hit pause, practice that. Let's try it together. Same eighth notes, so here we go. 2 and 3 and... Okay, so the next part starts our walk down, And I really would recommend following the second and the fourth finger for leading this. So we left off on 9-11. I want you to move the middle finger up a whole step and the pinky up a half step. It gives us shape 1. From here you need to add the index to 9 on string 2. Okay, so you're going to start out this one by plucking 11 and 12, and then 9 on string 2, and then back to 12 on string 1. Okay, here's what this measure sounds like. Okay, so we're going between 2 chords in the same pedal tone. So 11, 12, pluck together, then 9 on string 2, 12 on string 1, lift the index up, going back to where we just were, which was 9 and 11, so the other shape. So we're going to pluck those two together, and then back to 9, but this time you got to grab it with the ring, and then back to 11 on string 1. So you can hear 11, 12, 9, 12, 9, 11, then back to 9, but with the ring, and back to 11. Okay, so let's see if we can try that. 2 and 3 and... Now the same concept applies. When we do that walk up, you can see that pedal tone, that 9th fret of string 2, doesn't need to be added until the music calls for it. So that's going to make that transition infinitely easier to play as well. So that's that measure. That measure's pretty tricky, and so are the next couple as we continue to walk down. Here's what the next one sounds like. Okay, so let's tackle from where we left off. Okay, let's look at this transition. We left off with 9, 11, and the ring playing that pedal tone on 9 on string 2. So from here, what we need to do is we need to lift the ring finger up and get rid of the middle finger. Pinky's going to slide down a whole step, and the index gets added to 7. So we have 7, 9. The middle finger is going to get added to 7 on string 2. So this shape I believe we've done before as well. So this one, again, we're going to start with plucking 4 and 1, and then add the middle to 7 on string 2, and then back to playing 9 on string 1. So you may want to just practice going from the end of the last measure into the start of this measure. Right, so practice that transition, just loop that movement. So again, we have 7, 9, first pinky, middle plays 7 on string 2. Okay, and then back to 9 on string 1. From here, we're going to lift the middle finger up. We're going to take these 2 fingers and we're going to slide down to 4 and 7. So bigger stretch, right? 4, 7, and then add the middle to 5 on string 2. And as you guessed, play 7 on string 1 after. So here's this measure. Okay, so another one you just want to practice and loop. So let's see if we can try that together. 2 and 3 and... Okay, so taking from the start of the walk down, 2 and 3 and... Okay, from here, it gets a little bit tricky because we need to lift the middle finger up first and we need to drop the index finger down to the 3rd string. Take this shape, go down a whole step. That's going to leave you with the 2nd fret of string 3 and pinky on 5, string 1. Here's the kicker. You're going to pluck the open G and the 1st string together, and then string 3, which is the fretted 2nd. And that's what that measure sounds like. Let me clean up one of those hits. Okay, really, really cool. But again, it's tricky because we go from playing 4 and 1, and now we have to be fretting the 3rd string. So same thing as we saw a little bit ago. It's the change can be a bit confusing. So this one starts us off with the G5. So again, pluck 4 and 1, and then string 3, which is the fretted second. At this point, you can either use the ring finger to play the 4th fret of string 1, or you can move the pinky down a half step and play it. Either one works. At this point, we're going to take the middle, put it on 2 on string 1. I want you to pluck that with the open E, and then hit the 3rd string, which is still the 2nd fret, and then add the pinky to 4 on string 2. So that's going to give us this E7 to finish up with. So we have, okay, so again, together, and then we're going to play string 3, use the ring for 4 on string 1, then middle plays 2 on string 1 with the open E, play string 3 again, and then pinky 4 on string 2. So notice the index stays anchored the entire time. So same 8th note rhythm. Let's give it a shot. 2 and 3 and. Okay, to finish up the last measure. Just ends and resolves on the A. So you go together, 3, 2, and a harmonic on string 1. Now that harmonic is the 12th fret of string 1, and it's using the plucked artificial harmonic approach. So if you're new to that and you want to learn the mechanics behind it, check out our course on harmonics. You can click this link right here to check it out. It's part of our Technique Toolbox series, which is basically a collection of courses that cover different techniques. So just scroll down a little bit on that page and you'll find the harmonics course right there. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just cycle through this entire theme. It's really one of those themes where you want to just take 1 or 2 bars at a time, practice them, master it, get it down before moving on and doing more. So build it slowly. Don't try to jump and do all 10 bars from the get-go. So I'm going to play through all of theme 2, and this is what it sounds like when we put everything together. So a really beautiful theme. Now, after you play theme 2, you're going to go back into theme number 1, but I've titled it theme 3 on the tab. Everything's identical, so you're playing the same. And again. Into the B diminished. Everything up to there is identical. Here's how it ends. So let me tag the ending, sound like this. That gives us a better context. So it just has a stronger resolution to end. It sounds like the piece ends better when we end on the harmonic than just the standard A minor. But literally, you're going to come up to that same double E note. So when you finish on 2 and 1, you're moving the same movement up. So middle on 4, string 3, open E. But instead of going to 7 with the pinky, what we're going to do is move the middle finger up again. We're going to grab this E chord with a partial bar. So partial bar flat on 7, strings 1 and 2, middle finger 8 on string 3. Now, partial bar chords and full bar chords covering all 4 strings, it's really important that you have proper left hand form, not only in front of the neck, but also behind the neck. So if you're new to studying proper left hand form, check this link out. It's going to go super in-depth in getting proper form down, which is going to make these chords a lot easier to play. But that gives us a stronger resolution of going the classic 5-1 cadence. Okay, so the last hit is going to be a harmonics on the 12th fret, strings 1, 2, and 3. And this is the natural harmonics. So again, that harmonics course I linked earlier, I'll put a link in the description box below, covers that approach as well. So you can learn the mechanics behind that one and playing the artificial. My thumb keeps snapping. But that course covers both approaches. Okay, so let's do this. Let's try the last measure. Ba, da, da. And actually that gets held out, so you hold it into the next measure. But we've got 1, 2, 3, and then just let it sustain for as long as you wish. So let's give it a shot. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and that's the entire song. So a really cool approach for songwriting resulted in this piece of music, right? So I took what I learned from Lagrima and I decided to write my own song in the style of it. So Lagrima was kind of inverted. The first theme was major and the second theme was minor. But for my song, I switched that up. I just did the opposite. The first theme we learned was minor, the second theme was major. I think Lagrima was an 8-bar form. This is a 10-bar form. So 10 bars for each theme 1 and theme 2. And it had the same kind of approach, though. It had the same double stops. So we had the same kind of movement. And again, this movement is heard in a lot of classical pieces, as well as modern tunes like Blackbird. So, dropping my tuner. So the point I'm trying to make, guys, is that this week's lesson gave you the idea of songwriting in the style of. Last week's lesson, the blues tune, which I'll put in the description box below, gave you a different approach to songwriting, which was literally to take a melody that you know and love and use that as the springboard for writing, to write around that melody and create your own tune from it. So 2 really cool approaches for songwriting. If you want to learn more about songwriting, we do have a songwriting course. I'll put it in the description box below. And I'd also want to remind you that if you want to get the tabs to keep free records for this tune, you can do so by clicking this link or going to this site and doing a search for this song. And don't forget to, on that page is the really cool interactive tab player, so you can hit play, watch the tab scroll across in real time. You can loop bars. Yeah, you can slow it down to any speed you want. Just a really cool asset for tackling a tricky tune that has a lot of movement like this that much easier. So again, guys, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.